Boker Tov, Shavua Tov. It's a pleasure to be here. The time period that we're doing today is a time period of Atalia. I remember in university, I had a classmate, her name was Atalia, and I can never call her by her name. Atalia is definitely one of the cruelest characters in Tanakh. And so I got the kavod maybe to teach about Atalia. In order to understand what's going on in the time period of Atalia and King Yoash, I want us to look at two psukim in Perek Yutet, Pasuk Aleph, just so we can understand what is going on politically and religiously in Yerushalayim. Our Perek in Divrei Yamim is going to be taking place in Malchut Yehuda, but it's very closely connected to Malchut Yisrael. Just by show of hands, how many of you have been following the Nach Yomi of the program? Okay, so we'll have to give a little bit of introduction. The Judean king Yehoshaphat is parallel to King Achav, and not only are they parallel at the same time, they happen to be mechutanim. Achav's daughter is Atalia, is married to Yehoshaphat's son Yehoram. It says in one pasuk that it's not Achav's. It's not clear if it's Achav's daughter or Achav's sister. We're going to take the approach that it's Achav's daughter, Atalia, is married to Yehoram. What's the purpose of this marriage? They see this as an opportunity to have a united kingdom. A united kingdom everyone can benefit from a united kingdom. It will strengthen the borders. They have enemies from the northern kingdom, from Aram, with vicious attacks, and this seems like the right opportunity. Malchut Yehuda, Malchut Yisrael, HaMeuchedet, Chazon Acharit Hayamim. However, let's read Perek Yutet, Pasuk Aleph. After Yehoshaphat returns from the battle that he went to help his Mechutan, your Mechutan calls, can you come join me and help me with a battle? You go. He comes back, Bikoshi manages to survive that battle. Vayashav, Perek Yutet Pasuk Aleph, Vayashav Yehoshaphat melech Yehuda al beito b'shalom Yerushalayim, vayetzel panav Yehu ben Hanani hachozeh, vayomer el hamelech Yehoshaphat, halarasha la'azor u'lesonei Adonai te'ehav. You have to think who your mechutanim are. To joining, says, having an ideology of a malchut meuchedet is a wonderful ideology. However, who are you joining? Halarasha la'azor? Who are you joining? You're joining Achav. Achav had also had a similar chazon. Who does Achav marry? Izebel bat melech Tzidonim. In Achav's attempt to strengthen his northern border, he marries the daughter of King Tzidon. Izebel is the one that introduces at mass the Baal and Asherah into northern Israel. Up until then, people did worship sporadically Avodah Zarah. Izebel is the one that makes it the official culture. Vayakim et Beit Habaal b'Shomron. They turn it into the official culture in Yerushalayim, in Shomron. That's who Izebel is. Now we're taking that family, marrying to the family of Izebel, and bringing it into Yerushalayim. By this marriage, halarasha la'azor. Later on, the same Yehoshaphat is going to go into some business endeavor together with the son of Achav. Let's see how that's going to end. Open up into Perek Chaf. Pasuk Lamed Vav. We'll start from Pasuk Lamed Hey. V'acharechen et chabar Yehoshaphat melech Yehuda im Achazia melech Yisrael. Achazia is the son of Achav. Hu hirshia la'asot vayechabreu imo la'asot oniyot lalechet Tarshish vayasu oniyot be'etzion gaver. The point of this is some sort of investment in oniyot and ships. What's the end of this investment? Pasuk Lamed Zayin. Vayitznabel Eliezer ben Davadahu mimaresha al Yehoshaphat le'emor ki tchabercha im Achazyahu paratz Adonai et ma'asecha vayishavru oniyot velo atzru lalechet el Tarshish. A total disaster. They lose this investment, and it's told, why is this happening? You are mitchaber with this evil kingdom in Malchut Israel. That's what we have to know as background for today's class. Yoshaphat dies. Yehoram takes over the kingdom. The first thing Yehoram does is assassinate all of the brothers. Anyone who might be a threat to his throne is murdered. This is something that never happened in Malchut Yehuda. This is very classic Malchut Yisrael to go and kill a king. This is not classic for Malchut Yehuda to go and assassinate all of the brothers. This reminds us of stories from Tkufat HaShoftim. This is really not Davidic dynasty type of stories. He kills that. That's Izebel. Izebel introduces the what do they say? What do they tell Shmuel? We want a melech kechol hagoyim. Izebel introduces malchut hagoyim, which is tyranny. Izebel is this. Izebel, the classic story is kerem navot ha'Yisraeli. Achav comes home all upset that he can't get the kerem. What does Izebel tell him? Israel. What kind of king are you? Where I come from, if you want a vineyard, you take it. This is Izebel whose influence is going to appear on Yehoram, her son, or Yehoram, her son-in-law, and later on we'll see further influences here. So Yehoram kills the brothers. Yehoram is the one that's married to Atalia. Yehoram eventually is killed too, and they have one son named Achaziyahu. That's described in Perek Chaf Aleph. Here, beginning of Perek Chaf Bet. Let's open up to Perek Chaf Bet, Pasuk Aleph. Vayamlichu Yoshvei Yerushalayim, after the death, the murder of Yehoram, Vayamlichu Yoshvei Yerushalayim et Achaziyahu v'no hakaton tachtav. They appoint Achaziyahu, Kichol Harishonim Harag Hagdut Haba Baravim Lamachaneh, Vayimloch Achaziyahu ben Yehoram Melech Yehuda. So he's the king. Let's do recap on our family tree, just so that we get this right. Achaziyahu, the son of Atalia and Yehoram, who's also the grandson, the Zaidi is named Achav on the other side. He's our king here. Ben 42 shana Achaziyahu b'malcho, v'shana achat malach b'Yerushalayim, v'shem imo Ataliyahu bat Omri. This is the one confusing pasuk, because I said Atalia was the daughter of Achav. Here it appears as the bat Omri. Omri is the father of Achav, which would mean Atalia is Achav's sister. Many times in Tanakh, we can refer to a grandfather and a grandchild refers to as a son. As a son. We have Bnot Reuel, and they're really Bnot Yitro. So that's okay. As I said, we'll refer to it here as Achav's daughter. Gam hu halach b'darkei beit Achav, ki imo hayta yoatzto leharshia. Achazia is evil too. Why? Ki imo, who's his mother? Atalia comes from the household of Izebel. He is evil too. Vayas hara b'nei Adonai. In part of the massacre, I would call massacre, the destruction against the household of Achav by Yehu, this guy is going to be killed too. And who are we left with? Queen Izebel, the mother. That's who we're left with. Now let's... Okay, I'll tell you, sorry. And that's Perek Chaf Bet, Pasuk Yud. I'm sorry I have to go through this really, really quickly. I just want to get to today's topic. Pasuk Yud. Ve'Atalyahu em Achaziyahu. Ra'ata ki met bena. She sees her son is killed. Vatakam vatidaber et kol zera hamamlacha leveit Yehuda. The verb vatidaber here does not mean to speak. What do we say? Yadber amim tachtenu lumim tachat ragleinu. What do we say in the tefillah l'chayalei tzal? Yadber sonenu. Lidaber here comes probably from the word dever here, which is to exterminate. How do you say to exterminate in Hebrew? Hadbara, right? Is to get rid of. That's yadber, is to get rid of. One possibility that the Mefarshim suggest here is that she got rid of them through the mouth, which is through the dibur, through the mouth, by poisoning them, which is a possibility that would fit in nicely in we'll see in the story that's about to come here. In any case, she gets rid of Kol Zera Hamamlacha, any descendants of King Yehoram, she gets rid of. V'atayahu em Achaziyahu ra'ata ki met bna, v'takam v'tadber et kol zera mamlacha leveit Yehuda. V'tikach Yehoshavat bat hamelech et Yoash ben Achaziyahu, v'tignov oto mitoch bnei hamelech hamumatim, v'titen oto ve'et menikto b'chadar hamitot, ותסתירהו יהושבת בת המלך יורם אשת יהוידע הכהן כי היא הייתה אחות אחזיהו מפני עציהו ולא המיתתו. Very long pasuk. What's going on here? Yehoshavat bat hamelech. Later on she's referred also as Yehoshava. So Yehoshava, the daughter of King Yehoram, takes Yoash ben Achaziyahu. She finds a little baby, a little child, who was not killed. One explanation why he was not killed, remember I said perhaps she poisoned him? He was still nursing. So that's one explanation, that he's still, shikach otovet minakto, so maybe he was not killed. Et minakto, and she hides him in Chadar Hamitot. Where is Chadar Hamitot? One possibility for Chadar Hamitot is the quarters where the Kohanim or the Leviim sleep. That's one possibility for Chadar Hamitot. However, the Midrash suggests that Chadar Hamitot, and Rashi brings this, is Kodesh Kodashim, because that's the one place that we can guarantee that no one's going to enter. Why is it called Chadar Hamitot? So there's one possibility is the Midrash that says that it's Bein Shaddai Yalin, the place where Shechina dwells, sleeps. Yalin, Lalun, Chadar Hamitot. I'd like to suggest maybe it's supposed to be Chadar Hamatot, where the matot were also kept. That's where Mateh Aharon, the staff of Aharon, were kept. Maybe it's supposed to be Chadar Hamatot. In any case, this is a place where it is a safe haven. No one, the kings have no possibility of entering Beit HaMikdash, and no one will find out. He'll be safe there. V'tastireu bat hamelech Yoram eshet Yehoyada HaKohen, a very important character in our story. The king's, this Yehoshava, the king's sister, is married to a Yehoyada HaKohen, who is probably the Kohen Hagadol. That's why she has access to this. Otherwise, they wouldn't have access to Beit HaMikdash. Ki hi hayta achot Achaziyahu mipnei Atayahu v'lo hamitatau. Vayihi atam beveit Elohim mitchabe 6 shanim. 6 years the child is in hiding. Ve'atalia molechet al haaretz. And what's going to happen during these 6 years? During these 6 years, Yehoyada is preparing for the right opportunity to bring back the Davidic dynasty to the throne. You can't bring a baby to the throne. You have to wait till he is 7 years old. Seven now, I know it sounds funny, but 7 years old, he can sit on a throne. He'll be advised. We had other kings, Ben Shmona, Yoshiao, B'malcho. We have other kings that are very young. They'll have their advisors, but it's not a child that's a 3-year-old that's running away. He's capable of sitting on a throne, guided by the advisors. So they're going to wait till the right opportunity. Pasuk Perchav Gimel Pasuk Aleph. Uvashana Hashvit Hitchazak Yehoyada. What it means, Hitchazak Yehoyada, it means that for 6 years he is planning his army, planning how to bring about this revolt against Atalia. There is also great tension between the Kohanim and the Melachim and the kings. The Kohanim are Kohanei Hashem. Atalia, presumably, and we'll see that very soon, she's introducing the Baal. And where does she want this Baal to be worshipped? In the area of Beit HaMikdash. There is tension here. She wants control of the spiritual center. Yehoyada here wants control of the spiritual center. And that's why that's Yehoyada's also invested interest in taking someone who will be not only pro the Davidic dynasty, but also pro Kohanim and serving God in the right way. ובשנה השביעית התחזק יהוידע ויקח את שרי המאות לעזריהו בן ירוחם. He takes all these officers that he arranges. פסוק ב' ויסובו ביהודה ויקבצו את הלוויים מכל ערי יהודה וראשי האבות לישראל ויבואו אל ירושלים. They go around and they call, there is what we say in Hebrew a tzav shmona. There is a giyus, they're trying to bring all of Levim to Yerushalayim. It is even possible to understand from this pasuk that for a long time they just stopped coming to work in the Beit HaMikdash because it's all about avodat haba'al, and there's no avodat Beit Mikdash. So they go, they bring all the Levim. Vayichrot pasuk gimel. Vayichrot kol hakal brit beveit Elohim im hamelech vayomer lahem. Hine ven hamelech yimloch kaasher diber Adonai al bnei David. It seems that this was kept in a secret, the fact that he has this Yoash, and he says, I have Ben David, I've been hiding him here. Zeh hadavar asher ta'asu, and he has a whole strategic plan. How are we going to bring him to the throne? How are we going to get rid of Malchut Atalia? זה הדבר אשר תעשו, השלישית מכם באי השבת לכהנים וללוויים לשערי הסיפים. השלישית, the mishmarot of the Levim were divided up into a three-week cycle. Every week, a third of the Levim would come and serve. So now he's saying, what do we say in the army? Ein yitziot. There's no one goes home. We need everyone here. Third are going to be protecting one gate. Hashlishid mikem ba'ei hashabat. That's when they would switch the guards. They would come. This means either Erev Shabbos or Motzei Shabbos. Hashlishid mikem that come Erev Shabbos are going to be at Shar Hasifim, which might mean the entrance of the gates. Hashlishit beveit hamelech. A third are going to be at the gate that's towards the king's house. There was a direct road that led from the king's house to Beit HaMikdash. Hashlishit b'shar hayesod. According to, in Sefer Melachim, it doesn't appear shar hayesod. It says shar hasor, samach vav reish, which is probably where anyone who was tamei, suru tamei, had to go out of. So third is going to be there, v'chol ha'am, and the people are all going to join. So we're going to make sure all of the gates are protected by the regimes of Levium. Hema ve'al yavo pasuk vav ve'al yavo Beit Adonai ki ma'kohanim ve'mishartim la'Leviim hema yavo ki kodesh hema v'chol ha'am yishmeru mishmeret Adonai. No one's allowed to come in. Very heavy security here. V'hikifu ha'Leviim et hamelech saviv. As we're taking your King Yoash out of Beit HaMikdash, he's going to be surrounded by the soldiers. We'll call them the Leviim. They're going to make sure that he's well protected. V'hikifu ha'Leviim et hamelech saviv. Ish v'cheilav biyado. Cheilav biyado is not talking about a harp and a violin here. The kelim are klei milchama. The Leviim are going to be the warriors who are to protect the king. Ish v'cheilav biyado v'haba el habayit. Anyone who attempts to get near the Beit HaMikdash that is not in service, that is not a Levi, you must. V'hiyu et hamelech b'va'o v'tzeito. They have to make sure to constantly protect this king. V'yasua Levim v'chol Yehuda kechol asher tzivah Yehoyada HaKohen v'yikhu ish et anashav ba'ei Shabbat im yotzei Shabbat ki lo patar Yehoyada HaKohen et hamachlakot. No one is exempt. No one goes home. V'yiten Yehoyada HaKohen l'sarei hameot et hachanitzim v'et hamaginot v'et hashalatim. He arms them. How does he have these arms? That's what he's been doing for 6 years. He's been preparing for this battle. He makes sure that they are armed. Asher l'melech David asher beit Elohim vayamed et kol ha'am v'ish shilcho v'yado. A shelach is a sword. Right? We have, it appears, the Radak brings in the story of Yosef. Vayeshalchu et ktonet Yosef et kutanto. Vayeshalchu, Radak says, they sliced it with the shelach, a sword. So shelach is a sword here. Each one receives a sword, miketef habayit hayemenit at ketef habayit hasmalit, from one end to the other. They're all armed, the mizbech of habayit, al hamelech saviv. And finally, the moment, vayotziu et ben hamelech, Vayitnu alav et hanezer. The nezer is the crown. Ve'et ha'edut. Edut can mean the adi, which is the jewelry of the king. The edut can also be the Sefer Torah that the king had. We know the kings, Malchei Beit David, had a Sefer Torah. So it could be that is the edut. They hand him over the edut. Vayamlichu oto, vayimshechuhu Yehoyada uvanav, vayomru, long live the king. Yechi hamelech. They cry this out loud. Vatishma Atalyahu. She's up. She hears Yechi hamelech. Et kol ha'am haratzim v'hamahalalim et hamelech. The singing, the praising. Vatavol ha'am beit Adonai. And she wants to see what's going on. Vatere v'hinei hamelech omed al amudo b'mavo v'hasarim v'chatzotzrot al hamelech. It is this kid that's been pronounced king, and everyone is celebrating. V'chol am ha'aretz sameach v'tokea b'chatzotzrot v'hameshorerim b'chlei shir umodiim lehalel. And she understands this is the end of her kingship. Vatikra Atalyahu et bigadea vatomer kesher kashar. Mutiny. There's been a revolt. Vayotze Yehoyada HaKohen et zarei hameot pikudei achav vayomer alehem hotziuha el mi beit hasderot v'aba chareha yumat becharev. Make sure she is not killed here in Beit HaMikdash. We do not want to kill someone in Beit HaMikdash. Take her out. Ki amar HaKohen lo tamitua Beit Adonai vayasimu layadayim, which is explained. They made her ways to give her way to go out. Batavo mavo shar hasusim Beit HaMelech vayamituha sham. This is another check that we can mark over the curse of Beit Achav given by Eliyahu, that no descendants will remain from the household of Achav and Izebel. And now we have a young king named Yoash. Vayichrot Yehuda brit beino uvein kol ha'am uvein hamelech liyot le'am la'Adonai. This here we have a triangle brit between God, Am Yisrael, and the king to be loyal to each other. Vayavo kol ha'am Beit HaBaal. That was the center house of worship for the past 6 years, is Beit HaBaal. Vayititzu vet mizbechotav vet salmav shiberu vet matan kohen habal halgu lifnei hamizbechot. Vayasem Yehoyada pikudot Beit Adonai biyad hakohanim halevim asher chalak David al Beit Adonai laha'alot olot la'Adonai kakatuv b'torat Moshe b'simcha uveshir al yedei David. And from this verse we can learn that it is very likely and very possible that for many years they were not allowed to sacrifice. Because it says now they're allowed to sacrifice. So they reinstitute the sacrificing. Vaya'amed ha'sho'arim al sha'arei Beit Adonai. We have the gatekeepers. Kohanim were not allowed to work. Making sure that who is allowed to come in and who's not. They bring all the leaders. They killed Hemitu Becharev. Perek Chavdalid. Get to Yoash today. Ben Sheva Shanim Yoash b'malcho, ve'arba'im shana malach b'Yerushalayim, v'shem imo tzivya mi Beersheva. Very important comment. Shem imo tzivya mi Beersheva. This is a way of saying this king is very different than the previous kings who had a mother, Atalia, who were related to Izebel. Here we have Beersheva as part of Malchut Yehuda. We have a nice Jewish mother. V'shem imo tzivya mi Beersheva. Shava. Vayas Yoash hayashar b'nei Adonai kol yemei Yehoyada HaKohen. Pasuk Gimel is a very difficult pasuk. Vayisa lo Yehoyada nashim shtayim. We don't know who is marrying the two wives. Is it Yehoyada had two wives? Or does the pasuk mean that he he has Yoash married to 2 wives. It makes more sense that this is about Yoash, because why would we care to know about Yehoiada? But we're going to bring arguments lechan ulechan. Why would it be important to say that he married off Yoash to 2 wives? He is trying now. There was no one left from the Davidic dynasty except Yoash. We want to have a large Davidic family. So therefore, he is giving not one wife, so that this family can grow. That's one possibility. Another possibility, just to keep in the back of our minds at this point, is maybe it is Yehoiada that is married to more than one wife, and that will explain that he has several children, a point that we will understand very, very shortly. וישא לו יהוידע נשים 2 ויולד בנים ובנות. ויהי אחרי כן, היה עם לב יואש לחדש את בית אדוני. What is לחדש את בית אדוני? In Hebrew the phrase would be shiputzim, renovations. They want to do renovations in the Beit HaMikdash. Now, renovations in the Beit HaMikdash are necessary for 2 reasons. First of all, the Beit HaMikdash was built 150 years ago. There's wear and tear. And Yoshiyahu, later on, is also going to do renovations. And that's what happens. So you need to do renovations. Second of all, we see we're going to see in this parak, and in Sefer Melachim, that they were targeted attacks against Beit HaMikdash. That Atalia purposely attempted to damage the house of the Beit HaMikdash. So they needs to be fixed up. And Yoash wants to do this. ויהי אחרי כן, היה עם לב יואש לחדש את בית אדוני, ויקבוץ את הכהנים והלוויים, ויאמר להם, he gathers all the Kohanim and the Levim, צאו לערי יהודה, וקיבצו מכל ישראל כסף לחזק את בית אלוהיכם מדי שנה בשנה, ואתם תמהרו לדבר, ולא מיהרו הלווים. So he tells the Levim, go ahead, go out to the cities, collect money, and so that we can do this great renovation. It's very interesting. Why is this so important to Yoash? One possibility is Yoash feels a great deal of gratitude towards Beit HaMikdash. Beit HaMikdash is what saved him. He was saved there. So he wants, this is what we would call Hakarat Tov, the place that saved. He wants to pay back by restoring Beit HaMikdash. It's interesting, why do the Levim refuse? Why are they lazy about this? We sense a little bit of tension between the king and the Kohanim. Who is in charge of Beit HaMikdash? The king says, you go out and collect money, and what do the Levim always want to say? You're not going to tell us what to do and what we should be doing. We sense that tension here. They don't listen. And that tension will come up further on. Pasuk Vav. Vayikra hamelech leYehoyada. Even those 3 words is presenting a little bit of relationship. He's going to now rebuke Yehoyada. Vayikra melech Yehoyada harosh. Vayomer lo, madua lo darasht al levim lehavim Yehuda u'Yerushalayim et masat Moshe eved Adonai. V'hakahal Yisrael le'oel ha'idut. What is Masat Moshe Eved Adonai? Ki tisa et rosh bnei Yisrael is Masat, the machatzit hashekel. Why did you not collect that? As I had said, that you should go around the cities. And then Pasuk Zayin should be read in brackets. Ki Atalyahu hamirshaat baneha partzu et beit ha'elohim. V'gam kol kodshei beit Adonai asula be'alim. End of brackets. Telling us why is it necessary to fix it up? Because Atalyahu and her children, and her son Hashem, they had destroyed. They caused damage to the structure, and it needs to be fixed. After after Yehoiada has been rebuked, what does he do in Pasuk Tet? Vayitnu kol b'Yehuda u'Yerushalayim le'avi la'Adonai mas'at Moshe eved Elohim al Yisrael b'midbar. Bring the machatzit shekel that you brought from Me'azu mitamid, from the time of the Midbar. Vayismechu chol asreim v'chol ha'am, vayaviu, vayashlichu la'aron ad lechaleh. In Sefer Melachim, this is described as the first tzedakah box. It literally is the first tzedakah box in Sefer Melachim. It says they take a box, an aron, they make a nekev, they make a hole in it, and they put the silver into it. There's a lot of excitement about this project. At the beginning of a project, usually people are very, very excited to donate, and there's a lot of hype. Everyone's giving, and it's getting fuller and fuller and fuller. Pasuk Yud Aleph, Vayhi be'et yavir ha'aron el pkudat ha'melech biyad ha'levim uchirotam ki rav ha'kesef. When they saw that there's a lot of money, or silver, uvas sofer hamelech, ufkid kohen harosh, vayi'aru et ha'aron, vayisuhu, vayoshivu mekomo, ko asu liyom biyom, vayasvu chesef larov. They would empty it out whenever it got full, and they would keep on refilling it, and they're succeeding in collecting a mass amount of silver. Vayitneu hamelech v'yehoyada elosei melechet avodat beit Adonai. They give it to the craftsmen, they give the silver, vayusochrim, chotzvim, charashim, all the craftsmen they hire, lechadesh beit Adonai, v'gam lecharshei varzel unechoshet, those that work in iron, those that work in copper, lechazek et beit Adonai, vayasu osei hamelacha, they work hard, vatal arucha. What does the word arucha here mean? Healing. Vatal arucha, we read yesterday in Birkat HaChodesh. Chaim, what do we say? Chaim? No, so it's Chaim Aruchim. It's Chaim Aruchim. It is a life of healing. Vatal Arucha lamelacha biyadam, vayamidu et beit Elohim al matkunto, vayamtsuha. They managed to succeed. Uchechalotam heviu lifnei hamelech v'yoyada et shar hakesef vayad. What do they do with there's change they don't need? Vayaseu chelim. They make vessels. Leveit Adonai, klei sharet, ve'alot, ve'chapot, klei zahav, all these vessels that can be used, ve'chesed, v'yu ma'alim, olot beveit Adonai, tamid, kol yemei Yehoyada. Now this is a fascinating record of this event. If you look on your source sheets, on the bottom of page 2, is anybody familiar with this? Did you study it in the past? Anybody want to read it out? The inscription, the Yehoash's inscription? Okay, if we really would have a lot of time, I'd give you all the ancient Hebrew letters and give you some time to sit and learn. So I'm going to read it out to you. You can try to decipher it as I'm reading out. I'll read, translate, and tell me, what does this record? Chazyahu melech Yehuda. That's the first 2 lines. Va'as et kasher, a lot of it is erased, so it's hard. I'll read the important lines. Uvechol arei Yehuda latet ksafim hakdoshim. I commanded to bring the holy silver. Lerov liknot avanim, to purchase stones. Machzav v'nechoshet adom, red, copper. Laasot b'melacha be'emuna. What does this seems to be describing in this inscription? Exactly what Yoash is doing. I collected the silver. I hired the workmen to do the work. Va'as et bedek habayit. What does it mean, va'as et bedek habayit? I made the repairs. V'hakirot, saviv, ve'et hayatzia, ve'asvachim, all the different parts of the building. I'm reading the last 3 lines. V'haya hayom hazeh le'edut, ki titzlach hamelacha. Yetzav Hashem et amo bivracha. This was found about 15 years ago. This was a very, very exciting finding. This inscription. This inscription was really parallel to the events that are described here. However, it was discovered, even though the carbon testing showed that this was written in the time of Yoash, it was very, very, very compelling and convincing. It was a forgery. It was an excellent forgery. And how do we know that was a forgery? Because he uses some anachronistic Hebrew. In modern Hebrew, bedek habayit means, what does bedek habayit mean? Anyone? not inspection. It means, where I'd say shiputim, to fix. In biblical Hebrew, bedek habayit is cracks, the cracks of the house. In modern Hebrew, you would say, I fixed. But if you're saying in biblical Hebrew, va'as et bedek habayit, what are you saying? I cracked the walls. That's number one. Number two, it says here, it says, V'haya, the last three lines, V'haya hayom hazel le'edut. It is only in Tanaic Hebrew that edut means testimony. In biblical Hebrew, edut is a covenant. Aron ha'edut. Edut is covenant in biblical Hebrew. We have luchot ha'edut. It is not testimony. So what does it mean that this day is edut? That doesn't make any sense in biblical Hebrew. In modern Hebrew, say this day is testimony. But in biblical Hebrew, that this day is covenant doesn't make sense. And one last thing, and this is pointed out by Professor Ed Greenstein, the last part, ki titzlach hamelacha. In biblical, what does it mean, titzlach hamelacha?
Successful.
The work was successful. In biblical Hebrew, people are successful. V'chol asher yaseh yatzliach. People are successful. You don't say about the job that it was successful. Man was successful in the job. So therefore, this was seemed a forgery, and they sued the person who made it. It was an excellent forgery. Many universities fell for it. It was an excellent forgery. Why am I bringing this to you? In case, first of all, you can't not teach us without bringing this very interesting piece of information, and that's number one. Number two, it will come up. You'll hear about it one day. And you'll remember that this is not real. Don't get excited when you hear about it. If I'm not mistaken, the person that did make the forgery was later on sued, though, by one of the museums. They wanted to take it from him. The Reshut had to go. Even though there was a forgery, they still wanted a copy of it because it was such a good forgery. Go figure. Okay, so that's as far as Yoshiyahu. Yoshiyahu really, as we see, has this is what we would say in Hebrew, mif'al chayav. He really wants to fix up Beit HaMikdash, and he manages to fix Beit HaMikdash. Having said that, the next psukim and the next story is very, very difficult. Pasuk Tetvav. Vayizkan Yehoyada, vayisba yamim, vayamot ben 130 shana b'moto. He was really zoche la'arichut yamim. Pasuk Tetzayin is a beautiful pasuk. Vayikberuhu be'ir David im hamelachim. Ki asa tova b'Yisrael v'ima Elokim uveito. I don't know of any other person in Tanakh that is not a king that gets buried in the royal Beit Kavarot. Vayikberu. There is clear recognition that Yehoyada deserves to be buried with the Melachim, because the only reason we have Malchut David is b'zchut Yehoyada. And therefore they bury him. And this is a beautiful pasuk. Ve'acharei mot Yehoyada. After the death of Yehoyada, Ba'u Sarei Yehuda. Who are Sarei Yehuda? The advisors. Vayishtachavu lamelech, az shama hamelech aleihem. Very cryptic pasuk. It says that they come to the king and the king listens, but we don't know what is that they listen to. But we'll find that out right now. Pasuk Yudchet. Vaya'azvu et Beit Adonai Elohei avotehem. They neglect Beit HaMikdash. Vaya'avdu et ha'asherim ve'et ha'atzabim. Vayehi ketzef al Yehuda v'Yerushalayim be'ashamtam zot. They convince him to leave Beit HaMikdash. What does that mean, to leave Beit HaMikdash? What they're convincing him to do is that politically it makes more sense for us to start worshiping the Asherah. A way of showing loyalty to the Assyrian Empire, or to the Aram Empire in this case, is by accepting and worshiping their gods. That's how you showed allegiance. That's how you showed loyalty. Sarei Yehuda are politicians here. And the politicians are saying, it's not good that we're worshiping God here in Beit HaMikdash. Politically, that's not a good move. We have to go back. If we want to be secure, we have to go back to what we used to have, and that is the Asherah. And that's what's going on here. And he's the
sacred tree. What would you say it is actually?
well, it was a tree, but it was.
What is it here?
It probably is the Atzei Asherah, the Asherim, and they worship the Asherah, and he's convinced. It makes sense. During the time of Yehoiada was stronger than the advisors, and he had more influence. But once Yehoiada is dead, he's convinced that this might be the right thing in order for him to vayishtachavu. What does it say? They come to the king, vayishtachavu lamelech. I might even read this as saying, we will be loyal to you as long as you listen to this, as long as you accept. Vayishtachavu lamelech, we will accept you, but we want this to be the foreign policy here in Yerushalayim. And therefore, vayishtachavu lamelech, ashama melchem. Pasuk Yudchet, vayazvu et beit Adonai Elohei avotehem, vayavdu et ha'asherim v'et hatzabim, vayehi ketzef al Yehuda v'Yerushalayim be'ashmatam zot. Vayishlach bahem nevi'im lahashivam el Adonai, vaya'idu bam velo he'ezino. And God sends Nevi'im to rebuke, and they don't listen to those Nevi'im. Another story that has to be added at this point is, I'm going to ask you to open up, please, to Malachim Bet, Perek Yud Bet. Pasuk Yudchet. Right after the story of strengthening the house. Pasuk Yudchet. Az ya'aleh Chazael melech Aram, vayilachem al Gat, vayilkada, vayasem Chazael panav la'alot al Yerushalayim. Chazael, the king of Aram, is on his way to Yerushalayim. Vayikach Yehoash melech Yehuda, et kol ha-kodshim asher hikdishu Yoshafat v'Yoram v'Achazyahu avotam machei Yehuda v'et kodeshav v'et kol ha-zahav hanimtza b'otzorot Beit Adonai u'Beit HaMelech vayishlach leChazael melech Aram vaya'al al Yerushalayim. He does not want to be attacked by Aram. What does he do? He pays him off. How does he pay him off? He takes from his own treasures, but what does he also take? He takes from the treasures of Beit HaMikdash and offers. Now, I find this pasuk very confusing. Let's go back to Sefer Divrei Yamim. I find this episode very confusing because we just were introduced. When I introduced Yoash, we saw this great gratitude that Yoash had towards Beit HaMikdash, and then suddenly we see a certain change of he's leaving Beit HaMikdash. He's giving the vessels of Beit HaMikdash. He's giving them off to Chazael. He's not consulting with the Nevi'im. And I think this is what I would call here, Sofo me'id al tchilato. Many times we have in Tanakh an episode where we don't know what a person's true motivations are. And it's only at the end that we can go back, lemafreya, and see what those true motivations are. A classic example, something that you learned not such a long time ago, is Yehu. Yehu goes around wiping out all of Beit Achav, one after the other, slaughtering them out, and we see him as this great zealous b'shem Hashem. Only what happens later on with Yehu? He himself, he doesn't worship the Baal, but him and his family become well-known idol worshippers. And so then we have to go back and see, wait, why did you kill them in the first place? And then we see that wasn't a mitzvah what you did. That was murder. Because you didn't do it to eradicate the land from Avodah Zarah. Had you done it to eradicate from the land of Avodah Zarah, you would not have become an Oved Avodah Zarah. And that's why Sefer Hosea talks about Ufakadati be'emek Yisrael dam Yehu. I will take revenge for you, what Yehu has done. So fo me'idot chilato. In hindsight, we can go back and see what were the true motivations of this. We see this also in In the story of the Megillah, the story of Purim. Remember, Masechet Megillah, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai's Talmidim ask him, Mipnei ma nitchayvu oto hador kalaya? Why was the generation of Mordechai and Esther deserving to be destroyed? And he was a very good teacher, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, so he says, well, you answer. And the Talmidim say, give one of the answers the Talmidim bring up there, it says, Mipnei shehishtachavu latzelem of Nebuchadnezzar. And you have to ask yourself, they're being destroyed now in Shushan because their great-great-great-grandparents bowed down to the idol of Nebuchadnezzar and Sefer Daniel? Ma kesher? And the answer is, this is another case of Sofo Me'idot Tchilato. When we read Sefer Daniel, and they bow down, what do we excuse them for saying? They were anus. They were allowed to bow down. Only 3 people don't bow down. Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Everyone else is bowing down. What do we say? They were anus merach min apatre. They were anus, and we're forgiving. When they, later on, they choose to stay in Shushan, when they could have gone up in the time of Koresh, they chose to stay. Then you reevaluate. So fo me'id al tchilato. Then you say, when they bowed down, they wanted to. They wanted to become part of the culture. Now, when they, by choice, in the time of Achashverosh, they choose to come, choose to be part of the Seudah, choose to be part of the Persian culture, then we say, it's not because they were forced that they bowed down. They wanted to bow down. And that's the same thing here. Back to this case, Yoash. We thought Yoash was a great person, and a great Hakarat Hatov. But when he goes ahead and gives up Klei Beit HaMikdash, when he goes ahead and neglects Beit HaMikdash, then we have to wonder, what were his motivations in the first place? Was that Hakarat Hatov? I think it was not Hakarat Hatov. That's not why he renovates the Beit HaMikdash. I think he wants to strengthen it as a source of power. I think he sees Beit HaMikdash as his own house. Something that he is going to be in charge, and it belongs to him. He enforces his ideas on the Kohanim, and he sees he can give out the vessels, and it's something that he sees almost as, this is my house, and I can do with it what I like.
Don't plenty of other kings give tribute to foreign invaders just to get the foreign invaders off their backs? This is something that's exclusive to him.
It's not exclusive, but for him, you're right. It's not exclusive for him, but we do have different expectations of Yoash. We have to see what were Yoash's motivation. Let's continue reading. Pasuk Perek Chavdalet Pasuk Yutet. Vayishlach bahem nevi'im la'ashivam el Adonai vaya'idu bam velo ha'ezinu. Pasuk Chav. V'ruach Elohim levshat Zechariah ben Yehoyada haKohen vayamod me'al ha'am vayomer lahem Ko amar ha'Elohim lama atem ovrim et mitzvat Adonai velo tatzlichu ki azavtem et Adonai vayazov etchem vayiksheru alav vayirgemuhu even b'mitzvat hamelech bechatzar Beit Adonai. A very horrific story. This whole ending here is very horrific. Zechariah, the son of Yehoyada, rebukes the people. Why are you leaving? Why are you neglecting Beit HaMikdash? Why are you leaving the Beit HaMikdash to the Asherah? And they don't want to hear. They murder him. In order to murder Zechariah, who is the son of the benefactor of Yehoyada, this had to be done with permission of the king. And it was b'mitzvat hamelech. And where do they do this? Bechatzar Beit Adonai. And this is a very, very tragic pasuk. Velo zachar Yoash hamelech hachesed asher asa Yehoyada aviv imo vayaharog et bno uchemoto amar yereh Adonai v'yidrosh. Do you remember I mentioned that it's not clear if Yehoyada is married to 2 wives or is it to Yoash. So in Sefer Melachim we see that not only does he kill Zechariah, he kills his sons. And perhaps that's the reason, all of Yehoyada's sons. That's the reason that we're told that he had 2 wives, is a way of saying he had many descendants, and all of those Yoash kills all the descendants of Yehoiada. What is that? He only, no, he doesn't. It doesn't have the whole. No. He has a segment. You're right. Hold on. It does not have that segment of the story. Nachon. It's Banav. Nachon. Amar v'yaharog et beno chumoto amar yireh Adonai v'yitrosh. Okay. This is I have to say definitely one of the most sad psukim in Tanakh. It was mentioned before I started that this story is mentioned in the Midrash, and which, even though I was told that you study this so many times, we can't not mention the Midrash. There's a famous Midrash which you have on your source sheets here. In Masechet Gitin, we'll read it briefly. Amar Rabbi Yoshua ben Karcha, Sachli zaken echad me'anshei Yerushalayim. Bevika zo harag Nebuzaradan Rav Tabachim 211 ribo v'Yerushalayim harag 94 ribo al even achat. Says, on this stone, hundreds of thousands of people were killed. Ad shehalach damam v'naga b'damo shel Zechariah, until their blood of all the people that were assassinated touched the blood of Zechariah that was assassinated. Matzad damo shel Zechariah shehu roteach ve'oleh. Nebuzaradan, who comes to destroy Yerushalayim, sees the blood of Zechariah, which is bubbling. Amar lahem mazeh. What is this bubbling blood? What are they saying? Dam zvachim shenishpach. This is from the altar that was nishpach. Heviu v'lo nimtzu domim zelazeh. He brought a sacrifice and he says, look, this is not the same type of blood. This is not blood from the altar. Amar lahem Nebuzaradan, im tomruli mutav. You better tell me, what is this bubbling blood all about? V'im lo, if not, I will torture you. Esrok et b'sarchem v'masrekot shabazel. Amru lo, mano malacha. What can we say? Kohen v'navi haya beinenu v'haya mochichenu ala ve'rot shebiyadenu. Amadnu alav v'haragnuhu v'zeh kama shanim she'ein damo nach. There was a Kohen who was a Navi, and we did not listen to him, and we murdered him. And this blood continues to boil. Amar lahem ani afaiseno. I will try to appease the blood of Zechariah. He brings the Sanhedrin and he kills the Sanhedrin, and it still wasn't enough to appease. He assassinates Pirchei Kahuna, and it was enough. Bachurim betulot v'lo nach tino koch al bit rabban, till he kills thousands of thousands. Karav Nebuzaradan ve'amar, Zechariah, tovim shebahem ibadati, v'chi noach l'cha she'abed kulam, miyad nach. So Zechariah, do you want me to destroy everyone? Ve'otasha, he hails Nebuzaradan, he had thoughts of tshuva bilibo. Amar, umayim hem shel lo yibdu el hanefesh achat, ani she'arakti et kol hanefashot halalu al achat kama v'chama. This is a very fascinating midrash. And what's so fascinating about the Midrash sees this episode as closely linked to the destruction of Beit HaMikdash. There is the destruction of Beit HaMikdash begins with this story. That's very clear. This is where it begins. And the question is why? And we're also going to see that in the Pshat soon. Why is the destruction of Beit HaMikdash begin at the story of Retzach Zechariah? And I want to suggest 2 possibilities. In order to understand one possibility, we're going to have to read a few more psukim about what happens at the end of Yoash. Pasuk Chav Gimel. Vayihilu tkufat hashana, ala alav chel aram, vayavo Yehuda b'Yerushalayim, vayashchitu et kol sarei ha'am me'am, v'chol shalalam shilchu melech Darmasek. Aram, it doesn't help to send all the vessels. It did not help. They came and attack. I'm going to Pasuk Chafei. They tortured Yoash. Hitkashru alav avadav bidmei. Here's that wasn't Melachim. Bnei Yehoyada haKohen vayaharguhu al mitato. Remember, he was the one who was raised by Yehoyada bechadar hamitot vayahargu al mitato vayamot vayikberu be'ir David. Unlike Yehoyada, velo kavruhu bekivrot hamelachim, he is not going to be buried with the kings. Ve'ele hamitkashrim alav. Who are the ones that assassinated Yoash? Zvad ben Shim'at ha'amonit, ve'Yehozavad ben Shimrit ha'moavit. two random people. And they're very, very powerful medrash in the Mechilta, which you don't have on your sheets. I'll read it out to you. Mali mi hayumi miyatzu. Who cares? Who killed him? And who are the ancestors of these two of the two people that killed Yoash? Who cares? V'mi bnei Yisrael? Omi Moavim? Do we care? Who cares that it's what Zvad ben Shim'at Hamonit v'Yehozavad ben Shimrit Hamoavit? Ella. Why do we need to know? Yavo kefuyei tova. Shekafu tovato shel Avraham Avinu. Lelot avihem. Shenilchamim hamelachim. Kesheshama shenishba lot. Vehem sachru et Bil'am lekalel banav. V'yifarus. Who are Moab and Ammon? They are the prototype of Kfuyei Tova. Avram put his life on the line to protect Lot. And what do the descendants of Lot do? Hire Bilam to curse Am Yisrael. That is the prototype of Kfuyei Tova. Yavo Kfuyei Tova. And will punish V'yiparu from Yoash Shekafa Tovato Shel Yehoyadav V'harag et Zechariah bno. Malchut David HaMelech, and one of the most beautiful scenes in David HaMelech's lifetime is in Melachim. Let's open it up. Melachim Aleph, Perek Bet. On his deathbed, Pasuk Zayin. Ulivnei Barzilai Hagil Adi Ta'aseh Chesed. That's his tzava'ah. Make sure to pay back in kindness to this non-Jewish family. Bnei Barzilai Hagil Adi Ta'aseh Chesed. V'hayu be'ochlei shulchanecha. Ki chein karvu elai bevorchim mipnei Avshalom achicha. Make sure to pay back in kindness. We also remember David HaMelech who says, Hayesh od leveit Shaul ve'eseh imo chesed. David is a melech chesed, a melech who is makir tov. Yoash is a kfui tova. One of the foundations of Malchut Yisrael, Malchut Yehuda, is Hakarat Tov. That's the foundation of Am Yisrael. That's what they're going to learn from the very, very beginning. Ladat et Hashem, which is Hakarat Tov. Right? It's an idea that repeats itself over and over again. The Chet of Adam Harishon. What does he say? Ha'isha asher natata imadi. Remember Rashi? Kan kafar batova. How does Sefer Shmot? Melech Hadash asher lo yada et Yosef. Even all the makot, with the three makot, where Moshe won't strike the Yeor out of Hakarat HaTov. The Hakarat HaTov is such a fundamental message, and it is mi'avnei hayesod of Malchut David. And when he loses that, Malchut David lose their right to exist. When they have that kfiyut tova, they lose that foundation. That is one reason why this is viewed as the beginning of the end of Malchei David. That's one explanation. The other explanation, let's open up to Sefer Shmot, and through Sefer Shmot we'll understand another reason of why this is considered the beginning of the end. In Sefer Shmot, Perek Daled, and this is based on an interpretation of Rav Meidan to Sefer Shmot. Perek Daled, Pasuk Chav Aleph. Vayomer Adonai al Moshe, בלכתך לשוב מצרימה, ראה כל המופתים אשר שמתי בידיך, ועשיתם לפני פרעה, ואני אחזק את ליבו, ולא ישלח את העם. Go to Paro, but he won't send the people. ואמרת אל פרעה, כה אמר אדוני, בני בכורי ישראל, ואומר אליך, שלח את בני ויעבדני, ותמאן לשלחו, הנה אנוכי הורג את בנך בכורך. According to this, what is Moshe supposed to go tell Paro? For the first time he meets with him? B'ni bechori, shalach et ami. Me'od pashut. It's not very, right? Go to Paro and say, B'ni bechori, and let my people go. But we know that that's not what happens. What happens? Instead, we have Makadam, Makat Tzfardea, Makat Kinim, and so on and so on. Why? Why don't we have what we say in Hebrew, Zbein v'gamarnu? One Makat Bechorot. If we just had Makat Bechorot, Then the whole story could have been over. But God is Kol Rachum V'Chanan. And he gives Paro many, many opportunities. And these makot, you can all survive. They were like little punishments, but you could survive. And he gives them one opportunity after the other, hoping that he will change his mind so that we don't have to go to the severe of all punishments. And maybe God would have gone for 600 makot. What happened before the last makah that said, Ad Kan? What's the makah right before Bechorot?
Moshe.
And what does Paro tell Moshe and Aaron? Lo tosifu lirot panai b'yom rotcha panai mot tamut. That is shutting the door. As long as there's dialogue, there is opportunity for change. Once Paro shuts the door, that's it. That's it. Let's open up one in Sefer Yirmiyahu, Perek Lamechet. Yirmiyahu's in the pit. He's been there several times. Perek Lamechet. After a whole long story of him being in the pit, taken out of the pit, but even when he's finally taken out of the pit, he doesn't go home. They put him in a different prison. Pasuk Chavdalid. Tzidkiyahu, he believes what Yirmiyahu has to say, but he has no backbone. And he invites Yirmiyahu, he discusses with Yirmiyahu, what should he do? What's going to happen? And Yirmiyahu tells him, Vayomer Tzidkiyahu Yirmiyahu. And it ends with a conversation that Yirmiyahu begs him, just don't put me back to that prison. Vayomer Tzidkiyahu Yirmiyahu, Ishal Yeda B'dvrei Ma'ila V'lo Tamut. Tzidkiyahu tells Yirmiyahu, make sure no one knows that I spoke to you. And if they ask, what did I say? Say that you were just begged for your life. Pasuk Chavav V'amart Alem Mapilani Tchinati Lifnei HaMelech Lebilti Hashiveni Beit Yonatan Lamud Sham. Perek Lamechet Pasuk Chav Zayin. So Yirmiyahu is believed by Tzidkiyahu. Nonetheless, even though Tzidkiyahu seeks his advice, what does Tzidkiyahu do with him? He doesn't take him out of prison. He takes him out of one prison and puts him in another one. Pasuk Kavchet. Vayeshev Yirmiyahu b'chatzar hamatara. He's still in prison. He's thrown to prison. And at this point, how does the pasuk end? Ad yom asher nilkeda Yerushalayim v'haya ka'asher nilkeda Yerushalayim. This is the beginning of the end. Yirmiyahu could have prophesied maybe for another 100 years. Maybe there would have been other Nevi'im. Yirmiyahu's been a Navi for 40 years at this point. What happened here? There is no kahal ma'azinin. No one is willing to listen. This is a ni'ilat delet bifnei tshuva. Killing the messenger, that's the end. Now we can understand, let's go back and understand the story of Zechariah. Why does the Midrash see this as the end? Because once you killed Zechariah, you're losing hope for Yerushalayim. As long as you allowed the God to express himself through the Nevi'im, there's hope for change. Once you start murdering the one person that is helping you correct yourselves, that's the end. Let's open up to Eicha, Perek Bet. Pasuk Chaf. Re'eh Adonai v'habita lemi olalta ko im tochal anashim piryam olelei tipuchim im yehareg b'migdash Adonai kohen v'navi. Pshat of the pasuk is Am Yisrael are crying out to God. They're complaining, they're lamenting, God, look to what state we've reached. Tochal anashim piryam. Look what state we've reached. Kohanim and Nevi'im are being killed by the enemy. That's Pshat HaPasuk. The Drash of the Pasuk reads it as a conversation. Am Yisrael ask, look, Re'eh Adonai v'habita lemi olata ko in tochal nashim piryam. Look to how much we've deteriorated. It's even difficult for me to translate this into English. Such a horrific Pasuk. In tochal nashim piryam. And what does God answer? Yes. Im yehareg b'migdash Adonai kohen v'navi. You ask, how do you have such a horrific punishment? That's because you did a horrific action. It is not natural for a parent, for a mother, to eat the flesh of her son. What is a mother supposed to do? Give her child life. That's what's supposed to happen. And it's not natural for Am Yisrael to kill their Nevi'im. You have an unnatural punishment for an unnatural action. It is not natural for a mother to kill her child. And it was not natural for you to kill the source of life, the Navi. An unnatural punishment for an unnatural action. And this conversation, this way of reading the Pasuk as a conversation, appears several times within the keynote. If you look in your source sheet on the second sheet, it's based on a Yalkut Shimoni. This idea. Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yochanan. Ayek ko she'amar LaAvraham ko yezaracha. Rabbi Elazar asks, where is the God promised Avram ko yezaracha? How come that's not being filled? And what does Rabbi Yochanan say? Rabbi Yochanan Omer, Ayek ko she'amar LaMoshe ko tomar LeBeit Yaakov. So it's that using it. You say, where's this ko? I answer, where's that? And this way of reading the pasuk as a conversation, you say im tochal nashim piryam. What does God answer? I say im yehareg b'migdash Hashem, and this appears in a beautiful piyut. Im tochal nashim piryam, im tivashel nashim rachmaniot, and each stanza ends with woe to me. Im tit'alafna habetulot v'abachurim v'atzamat tzchichim alelayli. The Ruach HaKodesh lemul am marim. God, you ask all these questions about Midat Hadin. You ask, how could God do this? Hoi kosh chenai haraim. Mashehu kream modiim. Everything that happened to you, that you say, we've done, this happened to us, this tragedy. Ve'et asher asu lo modiim. What, all the punishments that happened, that you say. But all the bad actions that you've done, that you don't express. Im tochana nashim piryam mashmiim. V'im yahareg b'migdash Adonai kohen v'navi lo mashmiim. So we have two very, very strong, both, they don't contradict each other. They add on to each other. Why was this story a key story? Number one, we said the Kfiyut HaTovah. This was against the whole foundation of Am Yisrael. Number one. Number two, but this is locking the door, Ni'ilat Delet B'nei Tshuva. After this story, they really lose hope. But we can't end on an unhopeful note. Let's open up to Sefer Hosea. Hosea Perek Bet. Hosea Perek Bet talks about the ungrateful wife, which is Am Yisrael, and the ungrateful wife that doesn't recognize where all of her gifts from. What does God say? I have to take all of their gifts away so that she could learn where her gifts come. Pasuk Tetzayin, Perek Bet Pasuk Tetzayin. Lachen hine anochi mefatzeha v'holachtia hamidbar. We have to say l'chashev maslul michadash. We have to start all over again with Am Yisrael. We have to go back to where they had nothing in the desert. V'dibarti aliba, and then we'll start the relationship again. V'natatila et kramea misham ve'et emek achor lefetach tikva. The ungratefulness is going to turn. We're going to have to redeem it and turn to a place of hope. Ve'antasham kimenu uchayom alotam eretz Mitzrayim. And I'll skip to Pasuk Chaf Aleph. Ve'erastichli le'olam, ve'erastichli betzedek, uve'mishpat, uve'chesed, uve'rachamim. After everything is taken away from her, she loses everything, and she will regain slowly her rebuild the relationship with God, which was going to be built on the foundations of tzedek, mishpat, chesed, v'rachamim, ve'erastichli be'emunah, ve'yadat et Adonai. The story that begins with the king, Shelo Yada, Velo Zachar, will end eventually with Am Yisrael losing everything, but then regaining Yedi'ah. Shavua Tov.